is happening today. The US is releasing its Bitcoin report, at least according to the official executive order. This could send shockwaves. But right now, the whole thing is taking a massive turn and could end up differently than we all thought. Were we being lied to here? At the same time, Donald Trump is really cashing in on Bitcoin and crypto right now. Crazy, just crazy. Also, the US Central Bank is now officially supposed to be investigated or audited. That's the ultimate shocker. Jerome Powell now has an official or public proceeding on his hands. This could trigger the next Bitcoin quake. The Treasury Department or the Finance Minister is also calling for a review of the Federal Reserve, as just mentioned. And strategy purchases have now been made public. We've got more massive buys, more wild stories going on here. But first, smash that like button down below. Folks, for more freedom, for more peace, just take that in. I've even got a hyper-bullish Bitcoin beard. But look at it. Check this out, what a fake. In Germany, you just can't make a Bitcoin beard because the sand here is just way too bad. It just doesn't stick at all. You see that? How crazy is this? It's about time I head back to El Salvador for rising Bitcoin prices. So go ahead and smash that like button down below. But you can kind of see it here. Yeah, this is just a shitcoin beard here. That's all it turned out to be. Here we see for the first time, Strategy bought 6,220 Bitcoin last week, mainly through MSTR, so through common stock dilution. Their ATM programs, a bit of Strike, a bit of Strive, and a bit of Strides. Strategy now currently holds over 600,000 Bitcoin. Year-to-date Bitcoin yield of 20.8%. It's really massive what's happening here. I'd always be happy if the Strikes, Strives, and Stride stories would pick up even more momentum here so that we could bring in even more capital through these vehicles, because I think that's definitely relevant in the long run, that these vehicles gain more traction and not just rely on dilution, since Strategy doesn't have as crazy of an MNAF anymore compared to some other companies, which of course can skim off the MNAF even more aggressively. But we also have Donald Trump here, who's buying Bitcoin heavily again, 2 billion here. Here, Trump Media is buying again for 2 billion, and we just see, hey, 3 companies are buying, no matter from which side, whether it's from Adam Back's side, from Strategy's side, from Saylor's side, from the Trump side, Eric Trump, and so on, the whole Trump family and so on. More and more people are now getting into Bitcoin, so it makes even more sense now for a nation state to push through with Bitcoin. And in fact, we've had the announcement for a long time now that on July 22nd, it's finally going to happen. The Bitcoin report will be released. That was still in the executive order back then. And now check this out. Now there's the official announcement. It's happening. It's really happening. But it's not happening today. Instead, the officials have now confirmed that there will be a report. And this may even include a Bitcoin purchase plan. But surprise, surprise, check this out. Here from Eleanor Terrett, who actually says, hey, according to sources from journalist Eleanor Terrett, the crypto report, which must be presented to Donald Trump by tomorrow, will be shared with the public before the end of the month. Some are speculating that this will also involve the US's Bitcoin accumulation plans. I already mentioned this in my last video, where I said that tomorrow would be the day. Back then, I also said, guys, I'm really curious to see if it will actually happen. I could very well imagine that it wouldn't be the case. And that's exactly how it turned out. That means, as we can see here, if you don't pay your taxes or something, it's straight to jail for you. But if the government takes its time with the Bitcoin accumulation plans, then that's no problem at all. But of course, it kind of makes sense because all the other regulatory matters haven't been settled yet. Clarity Act and so on, all the other things that are still out there. We've now seen Genius, what has just been decided, what's now pretty much finalized. But then there are other regulations like market structure and so on, where not everything is 100% settled yet. And Bohines has always said, this needs to be safe first. Once that's safe, then the other things will come into play, and maybe they're a bit behind on the timeline. I don't know. Or maybe they also have somehow other internal problems. Maybe they realized, okay, damn, we can't even get the audit done. There isn't even an audit yet of how much Bitcoin the US actually has. And as long as the audit isn't finished, you can't publish an accumulation plan or anything like that. That means, I just think this is a total mess here and they first need to get their act together. I could really imagine that this is actually the case here, but hey, pure speculation. Let me know down below what you think the reason could be. What's also really intense here is, lawmaker hits Fed's Powell with criminal referral. So things are really kicking off here now. Jerome Powell is now on the verge of being ousted. They want to slap him with a case so they can get him out of the central bank so that the Bitcoin price can be pumped up. No, Donald Trump just wants to lower the interest rates here so his economy gets a boost. But at the same time, that would also lead to the Bitcoin price being pumped. And now check this out. Here, Fed Chair Jerome Powell hit with a criminal referral by House Representative Luna. And now, look at what she writes here. I have officially referred Jerome Powell for criminal investigation to the Department of Justice. Chairman Powell knowingly and deliberately misled both the United States Congress and the executive branch of government about the true nature, a completely false one, knowingly and intentionally misled the executive branch regarding the actual true nature of a taxpayer-funded project. Lying under oath is a serious crime, especially for someone who is entrusted with overseeing our monetary system and public trust. And to be completely honest with you, I find it very, very difficult to judge the whole thing here. I don't know the details of the proceedings here, I don't know the specific accusations, but to me, it already has a bit of a bad taste. To me, it almost seems like they're trying to get rid of Jerome Powell at any cost. And what do you do in politics when you want to get rid of someone at any cost? Then you just pin a scandal on them. We've seen it so many times before that people just get some kind of scandal pinned on them, and then the public pressure gets so high that eventually they resign voluntarily or something like that. It was pretty much the same with Gary Gensler. They just put him under so much pressure. At some point, he said voluntarily, "Okay, bro, I don't feel like dealing with stress. I'm stepping down." Jerome Powell denying it, saying, No, he's not stepping down. That's not an option for him," and so on. Yeah, I mean, for the Bitcoin price, it would be best if Jerome Powell were gone. You really have to say that clearly. In the long run, for the US, I'm not even sure if getting rid of Jerome Powell would be the best move, because Jerome Powell is still kind of an anchor, at least a bit restrictive, which is actually in line with Bitcoin's interest. Bitcoin also means, in a way, that we have harder money thanks to Jerome Powell. He's not, let's say, for an absolute cap or anything, but compared to what Donald Trump is planning, like lowering interest rates to 1% or even lower, Jerome Powell is still almost a sound money advocate. Of course, all of this is relative, so feel free to write in the comments below how you see it. It's all speculation, but I think the whole thing has some pretty weird vibes. And now, in fact, the finance minister has made a very, very interesting call here. Check this out. He's actually calling for a review here, or I don't know if you could call it an audit. Others have already called for this as well, and some have even said, okay, if the Federal Reserve gets audited, or Elon Musk has also called for this, it could even lead to the closure of the Federal Reserve because they've got so much dirt to hide. But check this out. The finance minister here is absolutely and unequivocally on fire, going directly and quite aggressively after Jerome Powell.
So I think that what we need to do is examine the entire Federal Reserve institution. And
I'm not exactly sure how he plans to check it. We can listen a bit further in a moment, but I imagine that would be pretty difficult in some ways. Whenever we've seen such large institutions that operate independently from the state and so on, and that's exactly what the Federal Reserve is, there are no laws, there are no normal legislative, no normal procedures or anything like that. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to sue the Federal Reserve or something, because they're simply above the law. But let's see what else he has to say about how exactly this audit is supposed to turn out.
Whether they have been successful. I'm speaking.
Achso, genau, hier ging es darum, ob die dann halt hier erfolgreich waren. Also wenn dann hier rauskommt, dass die nicht erfolgreich sind, dann kann hier halt irgendwie, können halt Konsequenzen hier kommen. Was dann auch erfolgreich immer bedeutet, ist natürlich auch sehr, sehr schwammig.
Actually, I'm going to be in the building this evening. There is a regulatory conference that begins tomorrow. I'm the keynote speaker tonight talking about regulation. The Fed as well deals with monetary policy, regulations, financial stability. And I think that we should think, has the organization succeeded in its mission?
This is also a matter of interpretation. So what exactly is the mission here? And today we also have a speech from Jerome Powell. Then we have the keynote speech from the finance minister at the Federal Reserve. And now the question is, was the Federal Reserve successful or not successful? I mean, price stability is somehow defined as 2% inflation or so. They haven't quite achieved that before, but you can also redefine it. That means what Scott Bessent wants to see and what Donald Trump wants to see are lower interest rates. Above all, they want to see a stable economy here. So we have different interests. Jerome Powell actually wants price stability or low inflation, and Jerome Powell and Donald Trump, they want a booming economy. That means they might even want more stimulus, which could also lead to higher inflation in the long run. And it could simply be that the success term here, how success is defined, how achievement is defined, is just being redefined. Because in my opinion, the agenda of Trump and the agenda of Scott Bessent here is definitely something different from Jerome Powell's agenda. But this could have a very, very positive effect on Bitcoin, because if the money printers get fired up, then we all know Bitcoin to the moon, Valhalla, let's go.
Look, its mission. If this were the FAA and we were having this many mistakes, we would go back and look at why has this happened? I mean, look at as you said, at the top of this broadcast, there was fear mongering over tariffs, and thus far, we have seen very little, if any, inflation. We've had great inflation.
So you can already see which direction this is going. Here again, it's like, oh, I should switch my camera. Here again, they're making it out like there's no inflation in this and that and the other. And in my opinion, it's not really the case that inflation has been completely defeated here and all that. Of course, they're throwing around these kinds of narratives, but hey, for Bitcoin, everything is going just as it should. It's actually perfect here that they're tearing each other apart, that they're arguing here. And when two people argue, Bitcoin is always happy.
Numbers. So, I think this idea of them not being able to break out of a certain mindset, all these PhDs over there, I don't know what they do. This is like universal basic income for academic economists.
And that's just crazy what she's saying. And you really have to agree with him 100% on that. That means I also have no idea what they're all doing. So they have thousands of employees here. They go to work in the morning, go home in the evening, come in and out every day and so on, do some kind of economic calculations, this and that, but still can't manage to meet their targets, although I doubt that Donald Trump or Scott Basson could do it any differently. I mean, this thing just needs to be abolished, that's all. Money doesn't belong in the hands of some central planners or whatever. Money belongs in the hands of the people. That's why Bitcoin is the money of humanity. Predefined rules, mathematics works better here than any PhDs or bureaucrats. And even if there are only 10 bureaucrats left in the end, those 10 bureaucrats aren't any better than 2,000 bureaucrats. And now we have the arrogance to think, okay, if we just hire 1,000 more bureaucrats, things will run even better. But the problem is what Scott Besson says happens. We basically end up with universal basic income, so we're in full socialism, and they get paid for making the economy even worse. So we're just making things worse by trying to improve them. So it's tough. So in March, it's already a really, really tough situation. I have to stop now. It's starting to rain, guys. But one more very, very important thing. Right now, there's still the massive TREZOR offer, up to 60% off. There's even a discount here. You just use the code DE20P, all uppercase, and you'll get 20% off the TREZOR 5 version. And with DE60 words or DE60P, you can still get 60% off, but you have to check. It's only for specific discounts. I've linked everything on my Twitter profile, so it's best to just try out the DE20P or DE60P code. There you'll find all the discounts for TREZOR, for all the hardware wallets, and also the link to the TREZOR hardware wallet. Definitely check it out if you don't have a hardware wallet yet. It would be really awesome if you still want to buy Bitcoin, 21 Bitcoin as well, and use the code Bitcoin Hotel, you'll get more discounts. See you until then.